Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining Daily Coug Connect on Friday, July 24th. It's unbelievable how fast things are moving along sometimes. Hope you're having a good Friday. It's beautiful out. If you're not in the Pullman area and you're joining us from other locations across the state, we've got sunshine and 66 degrees, so almost perfect out right now before the heat wave hits, right? All right, so if some of you, and I see many of you on the list today, have joined us for most of the Daily Coug sessions, and I appreciate that. You've probably seen some of the ones I've been doing on these tough conversations. We're going to continue our journey today. Going to go once again through a real quick review on what we've covered in the past couple that have talked about the tough conversations, and then build upon that today with the topic of Master My Stories. So here we go. Whoops, if I can get my screen to advance. All right, so we talked about tough conversations, challenging conversations, crucial conversations. A lot of the times, especially if they're with people that we've had long-standing relationships with, either in our personal life or our work life, sometimes it just feels like we keep spinning our wheels. We've had a conversation with them and it keeps coming up and it keeps coming up and it keeps coming up, and it never seems to get resolved. A lot of the times it's due to some of the dynamics that we've talked about as far as the model is concerned on crucial conversations. Now, once again, this is a fairly complex model. We're just covering the highlights of things. And we really aren't going to talk about this of what we do after a conversation or meeting is concluded. We will talk about that model a little bit right there, because today, when we talk about work on me first, that first section, getting myself ready and growing as a person, we've talked about get unstuck, we've talked about start with heart, and today we talk about master my stories. And as you look at the screen, the Master My Stories has a lot to do with this piece right here that's going to disappear in just a moment, the state my path. How am I getting into exchanging information with the other person so that they understand where I'm coming from, understand my motives, understand my feelings, and so forth. And likewise, I hope they are going to be able to get in there as well. I can't control them, but I can look at how I interact and approach the whole process of that exchange, that dialogue that hopefully is going to take place. So get unstuck, start with heart. We're going to cover those real quick. We talked about the dynamics of the elements that constitute what is defined as a crucial conversation. So we have differing opinions. Now, sometimes, just as a side note, I have witnessed a difficult or crucial conversation taking place between two individuals on a team. I'm not, the target, or I'm not the person actually involved, but as a witness watching it, and sometimes it's like, aren't they both saying the same thing? But they're not seeing it. They are holding on to whatever's inside of them, and that's part of that opposing opinion. There's definitely, you can tell, some energy around it, so some strong emotions, and there seems to be some kind of a outcome that is a high stake for them. It's meaningful. So we do want to take a look at what the mix is around there. So getting unstuck, we talked about getting unbundling the whole thing with CPR. Is it a content issue? Is it a pattern of behaviors or statements that this person does or that I've done? Is it starting to impact on the relationship? So which piece do I really need to address is the point there. And then we talked about developing the skills of relational intelligence, and I am looking at putting together some presentations for future Coug Connects around that piece. We'll talk about those a little bit later in August. We are going to extend into August, by the way, so just a heads up on that. And principles of effectiveness, we talked about the 7 habits of effectiveness by Stephen Covey. Once again, heartily recommend that you take a look at some of the information out of that. And then the material we're covering in these sessions with the crucial conversations. More on that at the end of today's presentation. All right, so start with heart, stay focused on what you really want. We talked about how when we're under attack, or it feels like we are, We have feelings that we maybe gunny sack, we kind of hide them away, maybe we don't openly express our frustration or displeasure or whatever the feelings may be. And unexpressed feelings really do go underground. And one of the phrases we've had around crucial conversations is, if you don't talk it out, you'll act it out. Meaning those things are in us, and sooner or later they're going to bubble to the surface. So we really want to look at our own motives. So that brings us to, where does our brain go when we're feeling under attack? Well, we tend to pick up signals that we're under attack, and we hit the fight or flight button in our brain. And that really makes us horrible as far as realizing what we're doing and how our behavior may be contributing to the whole thing. So re-engage your brain by focusing on what you really want. All right, so what is the motives that you're trying to look at? Because our motives internally, and they change during the course of these dynamic conversations that we're having, the motives can switch in an instant. So unhealthy motives can be, well, I'm going to prove I'm right, or I'm going to look good, they're not going to take me down, or I'm out to punish or blame or put the focus on other people, not me. Maybe it's to avoid conflict. That's a whole thing on conflict management, that you can look at the family of origin and how you were brought up and how you were taught in your families, but a lot of us have that built into us. I don't want to have conflict. It makes me feel uncomfortable. So I'll do things like, I won't have the tough conversation because it might lead to conflict. Or maybe I have that win button. I'm going to win this. I'm going to get my way. All right, those are all pretty unhealthy. And if that's your motive, it's going to drive the behaviors that are perceived and picked up by other people. Try to start incorporating and keep growing those motives that are, I'm out to learn. Wow, how did they come up with that perspective? Gee, I'd like to learn more about that. Can you say more about? Those types of phrases help encourage people to keep sharing and try to keep it neutral as you draw them into the conversation. What is the truth? Well, probably a combination of a whole lot of perceptions and beliefs that both of us have, or the team has, and we want to explore that. Maybe my motive switches to, let's look at how we can produce results here. What are outcomes we can get to? Hopefully, if you've been able to join Laura Hamilton on her sessions that she's been doing on Wednesday, Daily Coup Connects, she's had a lot of good information about, especially with teams, how do we stay focused on producing results? And then maybe I just want to keep building our strengthening our relationship here. So all of those are definitely healthy behaviors and motives that we want to take a look at. All right, finally on that, starting with heart, am I behaving like what I want? Maybe people, here's an extreme version of what that is, but the outward behavior on a person is kind of that deadpan look, there's no expression on their face, right? Kind of like that. And yet if you ask them, well, how are you feeling about that? Oh, I'm really excited about that. That really is energizing to me, but you see none of that. So am I behaving or saying the things that come out and really show people that I'm truly after healthy motives and outcomes? And what would it look like if I behaved differently around those things? So focusing on what results do I really want? Is it healthy results for myself, for the other person, relationships, the organization? All of those are good things. All right, now, hopefully all of you that are online with me right now, we're going to start to switch gears into today's topic. And we'll want to engage you a little bit on the chat feature. So if you have not already got your chat box open, you might want to get that opened up here in a moment, because I'm going to ask you to join in and share some thoughts with me if you feel comfortable doing that. What I'd like you to do in the chat room is just quickly jot down types of people you find difficult. Now, once again, not a specific person or people, but types of people. An example, people who are always late for meetings. Okay, I was raised in the U.S. Army. My dad had the whole belief of hurry up and wait. In other words, get there early. And if the meeting starts at 10 and you're on time at 10, in my dad's mind, you were late. So that type of thing. All right, so Corey, thank you. People who are intense. Alice, micromanagers. Melissa, argumentative and inflexible. And Carla, people that say, we've always done it that way. Oh yeah, isn't that fun? Right. People who are negative. Okay, any others that people would like to share? I do see your list of names out there. I know there are more of you out there. All right, can't make decisions. Interrupters. All right, a couple more. People who hold grudges. Oh man, yeah. You know, I did that to myself a long time ago, Jane. Thank you for sharing that one. Found out, you know, it goes back to an old comedian statement around that. I'm holding a grudge. I'm upset with that person for a couple years. And, you know, they had no clue, number one. And it goes back to this comedian statement. While I'm all mad and upset, they're out dancing. In other words, they're moving on with their life and I'm sitting here stuck. All right, people who are always right. Jade, people who only care about themselves and how things impact on them. All right, great. Thank you all for that. Now, think about those types of people. And what I want to explore with you are what are specific, let's choose one of them. Everybody look over the list. Let's do that first. So we've got intense, micromanagers, argumentative, inflexible, negative, can't make decisions, interrupters. Everybody look over that list and let's choose one. I'm looking, try to get in your mind. I know we all have our favorites up here, but how about we choose what Tamara shared with us, which is people who are always right. Okay, so I'm going to go with that one. So let's focus in on that. If you've ever experienced that, the people that are like this, what types of behaviors do they do? So start honing in on people who are always right. So whether it's one-on-one with you, in meetings, wherever you may encounter people like this, what are specific behaviors that they exhibit, either statements or other things that they do that put off this signal that they have this feeling of I'm always right. So, all right, so let's see. Aren't open to others' opinions. Okay, let's drill down on that one, Jade, too, while others are joining in, not willing to say sorry for their mistakes. Great, Emily, thank you. They cut you off. Going back to Jade's, aren't open to others' opinions. Let's drill down on that. What else might they do around that? All right, so maybe uncomfortable if they don't have an answer. They keep the conversation going until they win. All right. Okay. A couple more here. They always have to be heard. Repeat what others said. Oh yeah. And sometimes, Jane, I've even seen not only do they repeat what others said, so they have the last word, you know, it's like it's their own idea too, sometimes. Can't agree to disagree. All right, these are all good specific behaviors. So hold on to that because that's what we're honing in on are these specific behaviors. Unable to compromise. Thank you, Melissa. All right, so types of people. Here we go. They're always Mr. Right or Miss Right. They're going to be right no matter what. So let's start drilling down using the model here. Like I said, we're focusing in on that state my path. How do I get in there and how do I get in there in a positive, constructive way? Well, it all starts with that pathway, my pathway to action. So what happens in our brain is we see or hear something. So let's go back to, you know, this person that always has to be right. We see these specific behaviors. What we do in our minds is we immediately start telling ourselves a story. I'll come back to that in a moment. Those stories we tell ourselves, and here's what's really crucial about this, is they drive our emotional responses. Remember back to our little lizard picture, when those emotions kick in, that starts to drive our behaviors. And sometimes we're not even aware of how we might be acting or responding, right? So this pathway is just, it happens in an instant. We can pull it out and piece it out and draw a picture on the PowerPoint and that type of stuff, but it happens in an instant as we go through this. So let me tell you a short little story. How many of you have ever been in Seattle traffic back pre-COVID days, and very likely post-COVID days when everybody's back out on the road? This is an actual picture of I-5 coming from the south. This is southbound lanes coming at us, heading north. This is just past the Boeing Field area, if I'm looking at the picture correctly, because I used to live in this area, and I've been in this kind of traffic. So here's how that pathway to action starts. If you look at this, we've got 5 lanes of traffic here coming right at us. In a little while, if I'm picturing where this part of I-5 is correctly, it's just before the right-hand lane is going to have an exit lane onto the I-90 turnoff, so it changes so people can get over to I-90. But the lane keeps extending for just a little bit further, about a half mile further. And then, as you get closer to the core of Seattle, the right-hand lane goes away. It's always boggled my mind how an engineer thinks we ought to do an hourglass and take all this crush of traffic and take a lane away, but that's the way my brain thinks, right? So this was truly years ago when my wife and I first moved to Seattle back in the 80s. And traffic was like this still. And I would be in that right-hand lane, and I knew the traffic well enough that I knew that I needed to move over. So being the courteous, conscientious driver that I am, I would dutifully put on my turn signal, watch for an opening. Generally, there's somebody that's going to be nice enough to let you in, and I'd ease over, right? Now, here's that pathway to action. You see and hear, you feel, and you react. I would look in as we got closer to where that lane is ending, I'd glance over in my right rear view mirror, and here comes a car in that right-hand lane. And in an instant, the story started flowing in my head. Now, I am a very competitive person by background and nature growing up. And it can transfer into some of my responses driving. I'm not proud of some of them. And this person would be coming up the right-hand lane, and my brain would be going, listen to these stories. It'll be a BMW, and they'll have Oregon plates. I'll bet you they're from the Portland area. They're just trying to get ahead of all of us, and they're going to cut us all off. They're in a hurry, and they don't care about the rest of us. And I would literally, my behavior, especially back then, and my wife will confirm this because she was sometimes in the car with me, I would occasionally want to let them know what I thought of them. And I might do a behavior with, a certain digit on one of my hands. All right. So reflecting all of that, I'm like, really, Don, that's really stupid. And then one day, Darcy even kind of changed that behavior because she said, I wouldn't be doing that because we're in the big city now. They might have a gun. I went, ooh, that's true. They might. So instead of openly displaying it, I changed my behavior, and I would keep my finger down lower, but still, I'm all emotional about this, right? All right, now hold on to that for just a minute. That's how this whole thing works. Now, we're not even in a relationship. I don't know that person. I probably will never see them again, but I'm all upset. But that's how that pathway to action works. We see and hear something, we tell the story, and depending on what's in there in our brains and what we've held on to, it drives these emotional feelings and our resulting behavior. All right, so we're going to move on from that and talk about, well, what does that mean to us in day-to-day work life, right? We come back to these people that we just described here. All of you, I could tell just from your brief responses on the chat, you can identify those behaviors. You've seen them, you've experienced them. These types of behaviors that we've classified in our brains and what they do to us internally. So as we look at it, what we want to start doing it's retrace our path to action. In other words, we want to back it up to where that's before the story happens. We want to stop telling the stories and believing those stories that are in our head and really focus instead on what you saw and heard. So let's go back to the traffic example real quickly. What did I see? A car in the right-hand lane. That's about it. Another fact is the lane is going to end. There's heavy traffic. That's a fact too. Everybody's trying to, go northbound, that type of stuff. So what other possibilities? Now, this is where I've created the story of what I think that person's intentions are. So in the chat box, real quickly, what are some other possible reasons why that person is still over in the right-hand lane, even though we're right up to the point where they should have merged over a long time ago? So in the chat box, real quickly, what do you suppose some other possibilities are as to why they were over in that right-hand lane? They are unfamiliar with the area. They have no idea the lane was going to end. That's true. I mean, maybe they do have Oregon plates. Maybe this is the first time they're in Seattle. Mechanical issues. Yep. Distracted or unaware, new to the area. Right. All of these are possibilities. Another one, since I used to work downtown in that general area, there are 4 major hospitals right in that general area. Maybe they had an emergency, right? Jim, they're driving a Toyota from Pullman. And they took the long route, right? They went over White Pass and came up I-5. So, that type of stuff. So there's all kinds of possibility. Maybe they are from Portland. Maybe they have been there before. They do know the area, but they've been drinking coffee all the way up and they really need to go to the bathroom, right? They're trying to get in a hurry up. So there's a multitude of what possible things really are going on. I've created what I think it is, right? And of course, we all tend to believe our stories that are in our head. So we want to cut that off, back it up, and maybe tell ourselves different stories. So the skill to practice is really, separate those facts out. Yes, the lane's ending. Yes, this car is a dark maroon or a black or whatever. And yes, they do have Oregon plates. Those may all be facts, but separate it from the story. There are a multitude of other possibilities as to what is going on. That's the way we start changing our responses. Now, this is truly a skill, and as with any skill, we really have to reflect and practice and keep growing those. Fortunately, I've been around this stuff for about 15 years now. I'm getting better, but I still catch myself. It depends on the situation, the person, whether I've had a tough day, all kinds of things impact how quickly do I go from seeing and hearing facts, and then I go into telling that story. So your fulcrum, your ability to change is right there on that first one where you see and hear before we start telling stories that take us a different direction, and going back to motives, change our motives. All right, so as mentioned, this all comes from the book, Crucial Conversations, resulting workshops that they do all around the country. That is available to any and all of us, WSU employees, and you can find this on your Skillsoft online learning account. So if you find this stuff useful and want to share it, maybe with family members and so forth, once again, I don't try to say, hey, you really need this book. I go, wow, I found some really interesting stuff in here. Maybe it's a better way for you to have, you're talking to a teenager or a young person in college or whatever. Maybe this would be some skills that you could use in helping them get better. Thanks, Melissa. It's really a great book. Highly recommend. Okay. So anyway, more to come on that. Also, remember everybody about the Smart Health Wellness Incentives. If you haven't signed up, take a look on that. You do get points for joining the Daily Coot Connect. So looking forward to that. I'm looking for a great weekend. I hope you do too. Thank you very much for being here today. On Monday, Sean Ringo, who is with our environmental health and safety area, is going to be doing quite a bit on proper care of our face coverings that we're all being required to wear now, right? So everybody, when you go out there, let's get them on and have a great weekend. Go Cougs.